Come on, how are you doing? Good, good. So, hi, I'm Jay, and I'm based out of Berlin, Germany. So, what a lame intro that is. But Alan actually took away all the badass self-intro things I could have probably said about myself in his outstanding talk this morning. And it's hard to go after all those awesome speakers, but there's still one thing left that is both a coincidence and a differentiation. So let me call out something that hopefully makes for a good vehicle to convey all my respect to a pioneer, trailblazer, and mentor like Mr. Cooper. Hey, Alan, I still wear my long hair. So, on my day job, I work on the Adobe XD team. And besides that day job, I'm pushing two non-for-profits forward. One is Open Device Lab, which helps to spawn and to locate places where designers and developers can test their work across a variety of real devices for free. And the other is the Berlin chapter of the Interaction Design Association, where we are fostering knowledge exchange across a community of experts and novices. In my free time, I enjoy building furniture for our house and our garden. Last January, our third kid was born. And while juggling stuff around the house to make room for baby boy, my partner had the idea of getting a bunk bed for our two elder daughters. We sat down to define the functionality that piece of furniture should cover, which turned out to be two guardrailed beds for the girls, including a ladder, a guest bed, huge drawers for toys, a bookcase, and a pull-out table for our puzzle queens. Because why did that idiot ask for their wishes in the first place? We took a look at available out-of-the-box solutions, which really didn't meet our requirements at all. We took a look at what others built in terms of custom kids' beds, which helps in terms of inspiration and to do the necessary user research with our daughters, and to also clearly identify what we're not going to do. Take a look at this design. It says, here's a design for kids, a bunk bed based on the Velociraptor cage from the first Jurassic Park film. The box shape and letter makes for a perfect bunk bed. Well, Dave, Delisle, I'm not that sure. But anyway, working in high tech is great. But those digital things I do, well, that's all pretty virtual stuff, right? My work doesn't bring up things that I could touch with my hands or make my small kids understand, hey, look, that's something your dad is doing. And that is among the reasons why I love to find some balance in working with wood. Ideate, plan, go out and select raw materials at the wood shop to turn a selection of 1.5 tons of this, into something like this, just to end up with something as simple, solid, and durable like this. It's a bit like the IKEA effect, but it's very different. So before attempting to create that bunk bed, I had built less complex pieces of furniture. And here's another example that's been made out of the same pile of raw wood and went from here to there to that unique and tailor-made solution for our master bathroom. Before you can build this, you need a design and detailed specifications. And in the past, I used to sketch my plans with pen and paper, and I'm bad at sketching. More complicated parts of a project needed several detailed drawings, and that's where I typically took my pen and paper work to OmniGraffle to draw the project from multiple angles. But anyhow, before you can begin to format the board or even go and buy materials, you have to create a part list, which I did in Excel. But all those documents were never connected to each other. And while designing the project, whenever I realized a more fundamental change was needed, I had to examine everything again, and too often to draw all those things again. While I fleshed out the raw idea for that bunk bed using pen and paper, it dawned to me that my old patchwork of tools would not cut it for this thing. Also, this bunk bed, drawer, bookcase, guest bed, puzzle table, ladder was far too complex to be based off a multitude of 2D plans. But I had become so familiar with my cumbersome workflow. And yes, I did try to switch to CAD, 3D-aided design tools before, but I really never figured out how that works. Up until that day, when I found a YouTube video of a carpenter explaining SketchUp through the eyes and hands of a carpenter. With that narrative, I immediately understood how to use that tool for my woodworking needs and began designing the bunk bed in 3D. It took me a week, and I had managed to design everything in one tool, in one file, without the added friction and error potential of a multitude of disconnected documents. I was also able to prototype and show the intended outcome to validate my ideas with my partner in that one tool. And then I could even take my 3D design to the workshop to pull out the specs, to transform it into the 197 unique parts I needed to build the bunk bed. Did you ever get to read that hilarious article by Keaton Herzer? Anybody? What, 3? Okay. So Keaton summarizes the ideal design workflow for us. In Keaton's article, your workflow begins with pen and paper. You take pictures of your sketches and make them clickable or tappable using POP. But hey, wireframes are needed, so omnigraphal. But dang, a drop-down menu is required, so where are you, Balsamiq? Let's rebuild all those wireframes with you. You realize you dislike Balsamiq, so you reattempt the same task using Xshore. You realize you also dislike Xshore, so why not jump to Illustrator and a wireframing kit for $89? You export your wireframes as a PNG and share them via InVision with your team. Just to wake up the next morning and to cry into your breakfast bowl because of all the mean comments your team left on your prototype. At some point, the wireframes are signed off, so off to Sketch to work on the visual design. Now export these PNGs and import it into Flinto. But your stakeholder doesn't want to install the Flinto app, so off to Principal to make those screens interactive. Well, and Keaton goes on with that for another while, and while this article is fun and will make you laugh out loud, the ugly reality, ladies and gentlemen, is really all about that rather inefficient, cumbersome, error-prone workflow involving a patchwork of software tools that are creating a multitude of disconnected documents, which are probably all named something like So what could we do to change that? Well, at Adobe, not sure if you can see that, but it's Stone Age, right? At Adobe, we have many great tools. Some are around since more than a quarter of a century. Tools that can and are being used to accomplish things they have never been designed for in the first place. So at Adobe, a while ago, a team came together to design a design tool for designers. We looked at our favorite pieces of flagship apps, and we decided to start from scratch. We wanted to completely reimagine a design tool from today's perspective, build something modern and future-proof. What we built from ground up is now called Adobe XD. With XD, we aim to enable you to design at the speed of thought. So good defaults encourage good design. So on day 0, a number of principles have been defined for XD that are core to the product and drive our decision-making. First, XD is lightweight and approachable, but powerful and not limiting. Second, zero friction. Performance and UI should feel invisible to the user. XD is direct and real-time, accurate and instant. We're not beholden to traditional Adobe UI. We took what's appropriate and we left the rest. And third, XD is transparent and open. The community is involved, you are involved. And we're open and responsive to feedback, update our users on feature and bug progress, and our roadmap is publicly available. XD is fast and fluid while we are navigating around this set of artboards. Drawing is simple, precise, and vector-based, but pixel accurate. Changing the design, as in this repeat grid, or adjusting those stars, which is another repeat grid. Let me add my smartphone to the view here, where any edits made on the design are reflected in real time on the device. Let me go to prototyping mode and wire up the home to the list to the detailed screen, and we can instantly test our work to check how it feels on the actual device. XD allows you to do all the work, from wireframing or lo-fi design over to hi-fi design, right into prototyping, up to sharing your work with your stakeholders to get their feedback, all the way down to developer handoff. The short-term vision is to enable you to create all your specs and assets from within XD up to handoff in that one single tool and in that one single file. Another thing we announced last year to be added soon is visual versioning integrated to XD. So, as well as the upcoming collaboration features we're currently working on, still working on. So imagine to design at the speed of thought, but together in real time, in one tool, in one file, just like you'd be collaborating on a Google Doc or an Office 365 document. Fast Company has had a lot of positive things to say about XD. And my favorite quote from Fast Company is about the completely new, for Adobe, product design process we are employing and the thousands of independent designers who are looped into that, to test builds and to provide feedback to our pre-release programs. And Fast Company called that a uniquely nimble and transparent approach from an industry behemoth. They nailed it, the behemoth part. And the core of my talk today is to share some specifics on that approach with you and explain where it has so fundamentally changed the way product is being designed and developed at Adobe. So XD is currently available as a so-called beta version. And we all would probably associate beta with not there yet, right? Let me explain why this assumption does not match XD and how we managed to actually redefine beta, to be able to show our vision to the public, to be able to learn and to iterate. We all know this kind of beta software that has a lot of features, but actually lacks in terms of deep implementation, stability, quality, performance, or all of that. So in software development, we have 3 key parameters coming into play. And I don't know why it's always 3, but it's 3. First, quality. Second, time, as in time to release. And third, scope, which means feature set. On the XD team, we are using this own version of the magic triangle of project management, and we call it the iron triangle. And the logic, it is impossible to constrain more than 2 of those 3 parameters. Constrained scope and time and quality suffers. Constrained quality and scope, and you just won't make the release date. Very often, the wish for the largest possible feature set built with limited time and resource would result in bad quality and in bad user experience. And this is what a typical beta release is all about. The first beta has all the features, but it doesn't have a deep feature implementation because it requires time to flesh out all those very details. And then subsequent updates are being released, aiming to add the missing details and to catch up in terms of quality. This catch-up, ladies and gentlemen, fails very often due to one specific reason. There is no solid foundation. No solid and well-engineered technical foundation, because how do you know what to prepare for when you have not taken the time to think through everything to its very detail? And no solid and well-designed user experience, because same reason. So as opposed to churning out a fully fledged storefront based on our own assumptions, we made the decision to start our beta releases with a minimal feature set that shows depth, is well thought through to all those relevant details we wanted to validate, and that shows a solid design and implementation, and that matches the quality standards we set for XD. And then, when we've heard back and can measure ourselves and build on top of learnings, then we would go ahead and add functionality and detail, prioritizing by what is important to our customers. One solid step at a time. With that beta 1 in March last year, we have delivered our vision of the product, but at the performance and user experience of a full release, just with less features. And since that first release, 18 months have passed, where we've iterated pretty quickly by releasing an updated quality beta with improvements and added features every single month, which, yes, is a pretty dense release cadence. What we believe is that this approach is allowing our users, you, to influence and shape the product while actually having a great experience. And we believe our decision to not trust our own assumptions, to leave out even the most obvious functionality, and to define those details first together is really key in building an awesome product. And while we have released the 16th beta of XD for macOS and have the 6th generation for iOS and Android in those stores that know no beta, we've worked at full steam to bring XD for Windows 10 up to par with the Mac version. And even though XD is still named beta, we are absolutely convinced it is production ready. Thousands of designers worldwide agree and are actually using XD in production, so don't fear the beta. You'll miss some functionality while we are busy adding that in. But hey, that's what you miss with every other of your current tools as well, working around by patchworking things together. So I told you how we redefined beta, but how did we manage to decide what to actually implement for beta 1? Saskia Widela from the Netherlands had that bit in her awesome talk at Web Expo in Prague 3 weeks ago, and I'm using that to remind you what actually happens when you assume. You're making an ass out of you and me. So what could be done to identify the true needs of our users better and more precise and on a continuous basis? How can we ensure not to base our decisions on individual opinions? Well, we started off with the same method we're now using on an ongoing basis, which is user research. This is where we empathize, define, make something, show it, learn, and keep improving. You know that. It's nothing new. It's just our interpretation of however you want to call this thing that is often referred to as design thinking. Active user research happens in form of workshops at customers or at community meetings. And typically, we do focus groups at a ratio of 1 interviewer to a maximum of 12 attendees of around 2 hours. Normally, I start with an introduction round where attendees explain their current workflows and challenges. Typically, this organically leads into very interesting discussions among attendees without me having asked a single question. It's a bit like unmoderated interview. And it almost always leads into, it's like guerrilla tactics, but it almost always leads into recording individual feature requests and discussing the relevance and vision for them with the group. It's quite fun to endlessly ask open-ended questions like why? Why? How do you mean that? Really? Can you explain? But the challenge with it is actually to make people think out of the box, because they used to explain what they learned. Just think about stuff you didn't learn yet. Anyhow, based on our current research and also on the most pressing questions, I typically have a set of things I want attendees to reflect. So there is a moderated interview component as well. And to illustrate what we are talking about, I would show a quick demo, sometimes a prototype or only a concept. And quite stunning to ourselves, we found that actual printouts works best for A/B type questions. One thing we nearly almost use to help us prioritize what to do next is the $100 test. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I like to do that based on printed paper as well, since I can just collect the papers later on. And on the paper is an unordered list of features or improvements to XD, and participants are being asked to spend virtual money on those items that are most important to them. They have to spend distinct and totally weird dollar bills once. $40 on one thing, $25 on another, $20, $10, and $5 each on other features. And as a result, I get a prioritized list of the 5 most pressing issues. And when interviewing a customer or a team of people that is working together, I also like to ask them to agree on their spendings on the $100 test as a team, and that is where the fun begins. And it holds for a lot of interesting insights and fights. So I transcript all of that. And later that goes into a research report and into our idea tracking system, which sounds like super sophisticated, but actually it's a boring wiki. And research reports are being tied back into feature planning, where we pull out the recorded ideas, and the process begins again. By adding additional demographic data, and by recording the experience level attendees have with XD, also by asking about team size and potential reach for XD inside their organization, when these things have not been organically mentioned up front, I can map the recorded insights quantitatively. And this allows us to weigh in future work against business impact, which obviously is one aspect in decision making. Prioritized user requests and feature ideas, but also those from our own backlog, would then be designed internally, discussed with a selected group of users, or implemented as a prototype and being discussed in our private pre-release program first before we go into production. And the next step is to implement any validated features into the public beta and ask for feedback from the public. The inception part is we actually use XD to prototype XD, which can be a bit confusing. Imagine being a designer designing a design tool inside the design tool you are designing for designers. Anyway, the whole team is working on taking and qualifying user feedback. And this is something we're taking from social media, comments to our blog posts, or straightforward via email, or here at the conference, but primarily via user voice, which is a great tool. And here's a screenshot from, I think, 2 weeks ago, showing our user voice instance. Nearly 1,100 unique feature requests that came in those 18 months since Beta 1 on Mac in March 2016. Feature requests are being upvoted by the community, which influences directly which features will be addressed by us next. And as a team, we are asking questions. We are refining those ideas. We are discussing the details, and we provide a status completely transparent and in a dialogue with everybody. Layers are such an example. On the team, we said that XD needs no layers panel. Our collective standpoint has been that you simply should not need such a complex abstraction layer to design with XD. Just think of layers in Photoshop or Illustrator and how they add friction and complexity sometimes. I mean, such an overhead should not be required to even create the most complex stuff within XD, and many pretty complex prototypes built by the community prove that to us. Sort of. I've seen the visualization of an ATM, a cash machine, containing way more than 450 artboards without layers being available in XD. Well, but the people really wanted their layers back. Now look at that thing, 812 votes with 65 comments to it. That's a pretty darn clear feature request, right? Now people said like, hey, give us our layers back. And we said, why? And they said, fuck you, you're Adobe, you are layers. And we said, why? What do you want to do with layers? Why? And how people envisioned layers inside XD in detail, well, that comes through pretty clearly with the stream of comments to that feature request, where users are iterating on each other's ideas. They are challenging each other's concepts, and they're doing that in such a constructive and professional way, it's unbelievable. I mean, do you know the bottom of the internet problem? It's basically you're posting a question on Stack Overflow. You can read the first maybe 1 or 2 answers, but don't read any further, because it's basically people bitching at each other. Not there. I don't know why. It's awesome. Well, to wrap up that story, we gave up. We shipped layers for XD. And by default, the layers panel is hidden, so it won't get in your way. And if you really want layers, just bring up the panel. It is context sensitive, so it is only showing the elements involved to your current work focus. It is coming in the way the users wanted it, not in the way Adobe thought layers should behave. And it came to XD because the users wanted it. And because we've left our own assumptions at the door. To wrap it up, with this approach in product development, we've unlocked 2 major things. First, rapid validation and iteration. While we do have our own opinion, assumptions are prohibited. By leveraging user research, we're getting great feedback, and we're able to fail early. And second, user engagement. With every pre-release and public beta, users are telling us their most pressing issues. We are prioritizing accordingly and deliver a constant and relevant value add to the product. And that's it so far. We'd love to hear back from you how the improved XD feels to you these days. It's a free download. Now, not all of us are working on products that can unlock such a large user base for research. But don't worry so much about those numbers. What is important is that you're getting out of your building to your users. Make this a standard behavior and encourage your team to do so as well. Plan for that and block time for that. Maybe you need a little bit of budget as an incentive for attendees, like a voucher or something like that. But build your base of power users and make sure to frequently check in with them on your latest plans and concepts. Just do it. Don't assume what your users want from you. Ask them. So, what about that bunk bed? Here's the production-ready beta I rolled out to my daughters after 3 weeks of building and pre-assembling parts. Well, the kids can't sleep on the floor just because it takes Dad more than a day to put the whole thing in place. So for the first night, when they took the product for a spin, as you can see, still some planned features were missing. But the majority of it is actually both real and solid. I've then added the less critical functionality over the next days, and that is the final thing delivered, including that nasty pull-out puzzle table. And my kids loved it. And who knows? Maybe they are going to become great designers later in their life and will join a worldwide community of Adobe XD users just to enjoy finding the product still living and breathing the same lean principles we apply to it today. I would love that. Have a nice remaining event. And if you've already checked out XD or actually use it in production, I'll be around today to have a chat about your experience. And if you'd like to grab an XD metal sticker or a pair of XD socks, it's getting winter, come right here to the stage right after the next talk in the lunch break. I'll be here. Thank you, Hubert Aniszewski and UX Poland for having me today, and thank you all.
Thank you very much.